Russia unveiled its new T-14 Armata tank in 2014, the first new tank type produced since the fall of the Soviet Union. It's set to enter service in 2020, but production issues mean that Russia will still rely on its older T-90 tanks for now. Meanwhile, China continues to modernize its huge 7,000 tank fleet, of which only around 2,000 are modern, with the introduction of the latest version of its ZTZ-96 main battle tank, MBT, the ZTZ-96B, last year. Those modernization efforts now render the U.S. Army's M1 Abrams MBT, introduced in 1980, the oldest modern MBT in service in a major power. With other militaries' tanks reaching parity with the Abrams, the U.S. has now begun the process of designing its replacement. Having suffered more than a decade of financial and political turbulence, Russia is now embarking on a major revitalization of its land forces. The T-14 is just one of the projects it's developing as it aims to replace all of its armored fighting vehicle types with completely new, modern forms. The T-14 continues to use Russia's standard 125mm gun, but the turret design seems capable of accommodating a gun of up to 152mm. Notably, its main weapon is fed by an autoloader in the turret, which is uniquely completely crewless. Protecting the tank is the new Afghan active protection system, which, aside from defending against missiles and rocket-propelled grenades, is allegedly able to protect against modern kinetic rounds such as the latest M829A4 depleted uranium sabots used by the U.S. Army. The ZTZ-96 MBTs are slated to make up the bulk of China's tank modernization program. They're equipped with a 125mm main gun and are protected by a combination of composite and explosive reactive armor, ERA, similar to the Contact 5 system used on Russian T-90s. China's current strategy seems to be to continue to replace older tanks with the T-96, particularly its latest 96B variant, rather than increase production of the more expensive but more advanced T-99s. While less radical than Russia's design overhaul, it represents a serious modernization effort, especially given the size of China's tank army. The venerable M1 Abrams tank probably remains the most dominant MBT, although it's now showing its age. The Abrams wields a highly accurate and ammunition-flexible 120mm gun and is protected by the Jobhum composite armor, which proved capable of withstanding multiple rocket-propelled grenades and older Russian anti-tank missiles during the First Gulf War. The urban terrain of the Iraq War led to the Tusk upgrades to the Abrams, giving it remote weapons systems, better belly armor, and ERA on the sides. The most recent round of upgrades has replaced the wiring and added new networks to the tanks, but the U.S. military is now pushing the limits of what can be done with the Abrams. The tank's main problem is its weight. At more than 70 tons, it's one of the heaviest MBTs in service. Australia recently found that to be an issue when it discovered that the tanks were too heavy for the landing craft assigned to the new Canberra-class helicopter landing docks. Repeated US Army attempts to replace the Abrams were cut due to cost blowouts, and the latest major update for the M1, the M1A3, failed to materialize. The most recent attempt, the next-generation combat vehicle, remains in the conceptual stage, and is primarily aimed at replacing the Bradley fighting vehicle, not the Abrams. The Abrams is currently slated for upgrades in around 2022, which have been deemed more cost-effective than trying to develop a full replacement. Australia's fleet of M1A1 Abrams has kept pace with the American upgrades, most recently with a series of upgrades meant to extend the platform's life to 2035. The planned Hiroshima reforms divided the Abrams fleet between the 3 combat brigades as part of an armored cavalry regiment. That has maximized their combined arms potential, as the tanks can better practice and deploy with other Army elements. But the small number of tanks in each regiment means that they are too few to carry out effective armored warfare against enemy tanks or an independent breakthrough role against enemy lines. To remedy that, the goal is to increase the fleet from 59 tanks to 90, as well as provide a number of support vehicles based on the Abrams chassis.